I'm going to keep my story very real. I'm going to keep it real, and I'm not going to give you the technical kind of jargon that an artist deals with, like applying for grants and writing a CV and stuff like that. I'm gonna mainly talk about my story as an artist, and to start off, I'd like to say that. My story is unique as an artist, as is every artist's life is unique, and artists use their skills in for different motives, and you'll find out a bit about how I use art in my life. I also, my real job is I work at an art studio in Winnipeg called Art Beat Studio, and I run a program there. I'm the founder and studio facilitator of the program, and we have, every 6 months we have 9 artists living with mental illness come through our program. So we have a body of about 150 alumni artists who've gone through the program, and they vary from any sort of mental illness. To start my presentation, I'm going to talk a bit about where I'm coming from. When I was your age, I was about 17 years old. I went through probably the most horrifying period of my life. I call that moment the dark night of the soul, and often artists will talk about the dark night of the soul. I started, my thoughts were very confused, and my thinking was not very good, and I was focusing almost completely on my academics and thinking that it would get me a job as a doctor or something, and I was pretty smart. But all that focusing was very stressful, and eventually I started to deteriorate mentally, and I decided I was going to go to the U of W and take science and become a doctor or a lab tech or something like that. But to give you some history, I was an artist before any of the mental stuff came into place, and I used art as it just came naturally to me. That was one of my strengths. I wrote poetry. I carved soapstone, I drew, I painted, and but as I went into science at the U of W, my life started to deteriorate even more, really rapidly, and I started to behave in really weird ways, and this was noticeable to all my friends, and I didn't really have too many friends at that point in university. And eventually, I landed up in the library at the U of W, terrified that I couldn't leave, and I felt trapped there. And eventually, I basically I managed to get out of the library. I wasn't really trapped, but in my mind, I was definitely trapped. And I called my parents, and we set up an appointment with the doctor, and I got the diagnosis of schizophrenia, which was, for me, it was a relief that there was a name for all the pain and anguish I was going through. So what I did is I moved back to, I moved out to my parents' farm, and I started doing pottery as with my mom. She's a potter, and it was a very healing experience. I found that pottery and drawing and painting was actually helping me get stronger. And the next year I applied, or the same year I finished science, I applied into the School of Art at the University of Manitoba with a portfolio, and I was accepted. And this is sort of where my images start. Um, I, I'm not much of a realistic painter. I don't paint realism. I don't. I would say I'm more along the lines of an expressive artist, like an expressionistic artist, where I paint my feelings and my emotions, and you'll often notice in my art as the presentation goes on that my art is very expressive. And I'm going to give you an intimate glimpse of my life as an artist, and I want to just to touch on the idea that art is not like a normal trade that you get trained for and you become an artist. Like, that's not the way it works. You can study to become an artist, and there actually the skills that you learn as an artist are really transferable, and you can do almost anything when you become an artist. And when I say become an artist, I actually think that everyone's an artist and has creativity, and it's how you use it. And I think everyone should use art to help them heal from anything. It's important. So I'm just gonna scroll through these. These are some of my still life paintings that I just when I went to art school, I trained formally, so I learned how to draw really formally as well, and paint, and that was just an exercise just to paint in different colors. And there you'll see another still life I did. And I like doing still life, and Van Gogh did still lifes, and he would actually paint a still life for up to 400 times in different light to really understand the subject. And then I move on to portraits. This was one of my first paintings ever, and I would just, like this one, I just picked out of a book and painted it. And here's my wife, and this is one of my better paintings. I think stronger paintings, and actually, as my story unfolds, you'll see more of how I use art to help me in recovery from anything. That's a portrait of my wife too, and I use a kind of iconic kind of image like you'll see in Bibles, or kind of the iconic image. This is just a friend of mine that I painted. That's my little nephew. And this is an abstract portrait that I painted of my mother, and I often see things differently than normal people do, and I can see things in color and shape, and this is her aura that I visualized and turned it into a portrait of her. And this was my psychiatrist, who at the time I wasn't too pleased with. He was telling me things that were kind of pecking at me, and that's the general feel of this. He's got a beak with some blood on it. He's pecking at me. And my images can be dark. I just want to say that. My imagery can be dark, but that's not to say there's not hope that comes out of them. Usually when I'm working through something difficult, it takes on a dark image, so there's blood and there's guts and it's dark. But when I come out of that, there's often a very positive meaning and message to it. Another portrait. This is my mother, another portrait. And you can tell I'm very expressive, and I'm not so concerned with capturing reality. And then I move into abstracts here, because I do love abstract painting as well. And these are just some samples of some recent abstracts that I've been working on. And I do my work outside of my time. My real job, I'll say that, keeps me very occupied, and it's more than a full-time job. And I'm on a salary there. It's a nonprofit job, and that helps me pay the bills. And you'll find that as artists, you may have to take on a job that helps pay the bills. That's not abnormal or weird. That kind of is pretty normal. And I shouldn't say use the word normal, because I don't think there is really any normal or abnormal. And then I move into self-portraits, and it was interesting. A girl came up yesterday and said she found it hard to paint herself and her situation. And I find that I gravitate to that. Like, I can paint self-portraits really easily, and I actually like doing it, but I find doing other subject matter, like still lifes and other subject, pretty hard. This painting was showcased in the National Museum of Ottawa, and at a show called Mindscapes. And I was dealing with art and mental health. That's a self-portrait. And there's another self-portrait. And this is where I'm gonna, my project will get, my presentation will get more real. I've lived through some serious depression and picked up some bad habits. I'm a smoker. I don't condone it, but I'm a smoker, and this symbolizes my infatuation with smoking, and this is called diva nicotina, and this kind of symbolizes my seduction to tobacco and how it seduced me, and it's a terrible habit, and I don't suggest anyone try it. And this goes on to show another self-portrait. This one's kind of a starry-eyed self-portrait. And this symbolizes basically my, how sometimes I feel that people, I have lots, I'm carrying lots of people on my shoulders, or maybe spiritually more than physically, people I love, people in my family, and so on. And this was just a recent self-portrait I did, kind of a shaman image. And then I was married in, and I'm getting personal because this is my art practice, and everything, the personal is political, and the art practice is very personal. And so my marriage, I got married on a beautiful sunny weekend, and my wife, just an amazing person. And this kind of symbolizes a premonition thing that I had. I painted this. This is one of my first paintings, and you can see I'm standing on a woman's back, and I have a child on my back, and I'm kind of diving into hell. And to me, this was very premonitional as to where I was going with my life. I had no idea what I knew I wanted to get married. I wanted to have well, it wasn't even that. I just wanted to have a girlfriend. And this kind of depicts, I don't know how else to say this, but like infidelity kind of things. And this again was, these issues came up in my life. This one's called Monkey on My Back. And this, I felt, as I'll go closer, my marriage started to deteriorate, and this one says, I'm sorry. And you'll notice these ghost figures of a son, my son and my wife, floating above me, and I'm in hell, and I'm burning. And as my story gets even harsher, I had a son that was born, and my marriage was dissolving as the son was growing up. He was just 2 years old, And this one's called Toxic, and this is kind of where my marriage went. And this is me walking away with my son, which is a very hopeful piece to the end of the marriage, but it was a very hopeful. And now I go into even a more serious side. One of the side effects that I was left with throughout my life, because of I don't blame anything for it other than maybe being a little too explorative in my youth, and that comes after. So I had my child, and I'll show it. The stability there is definitely not there, and if you can see, I was the scariest time in my life when I had a kid. It was scary. I was 30, and this is what I felt, stability. And then there's a couple images of my son. My son is probably he provides me with hope in my life, and I paint him as a way of healing. He's my little angel. And this is another piece, a biblical connotation where, I don't know if you've heard of this story where an angel came to Abraham and said, you have to kill your son Isaac, and if you don't do this, God's going to be very mad at you. And this is the confrontation between the angel and Abraham, and Isaac is there. And I compare this to my life with my son and how much love I feel for him. And then this is where I talk about I became somewhat, I was exploratory in my youth, and I got trapped in a very dark place with alcohol. And this is called addiction, and this is another self-portrait. And this symbolizes what I felt when I was going through the problem. I'm in recovery now. I've been sober for 1.5 years, so, but this depicts what I was going through. This is the dogs of hell, or the hounds of hell, kind of attacking me when I'm in the problem. And and this symbolizes me as in recovery. This symbolized me in recovery. So, and then work. I explained a bit about what I do in work, and these are just some things that represent my work. This one's called lungs, and this one's a dark one. And again, like, this symbolizes my depression at times, and sort of a Cujo dog. I don't know what that symbolizes. It just came out. But and then rebirth. I have moments where I went through extreme depression, and this symbolizes the moment when I painted myself with my wrist slit in a bathtub. And as I was painting this, I actually went through a transition where I felt there was like a lot of positive things in my life happening. And so you'll notice a lot of green and growth around me. It's kind of like a garden. And this garden is overtaking me, and it's giving me life. And I painted a big sort of Superman symbol over top of it, but kind of the rebirth. And again, this constant symbolism of rebirth, where this one portrays me where I wanted to go, and I wanted to hang myself. And then where I came out of that was sort of a gunslinger and more stronger for surviving that. And then this one, again, a rebirth period where my psychiatrist and everyone were telling me, you'll notice on the right, there's this rich green person. There's this green foliage flowing out of his head. And that's me, and people telling me that I'm delusional and that my thoughts are not right. And I actually pulled that plant right out of me, and you'll notice in the center there's a lot of blood and gore as this plant, this tree is coming out of my head. And on the far right, you'll notice what I became, which is someone with boundaries, and there's a lot of scar tissue there, but I survived. And I want to qualify what I say with this, just because depression and mental illness happens a lot in high school, and we don't really talk about it. But it's important to reach for help when you start to experience depression and stuff. And as artists, a lot of you probably write poetry and do art. I suggest you keep doing it. It does help, and it helps carry us forward. And it's a healing tool. And my last image here is kind of a trick. This image, there's about 50 images painted on one canvas, and this is this I consider one of my strongest pieces. It was a healing piece, and the paint is about like 4 inches on this, because I painted image after image after image. Every week for about a year I painted, and this was a healing piece after my experience with some loss, so at this point, you've gotten an intimate look at my life as an artist, and some of you may be turned off and not want to. Hopefully not that way. You don't want to become an artist. I think if you are an artist, you are an artist, and I think everyone's an artist.